Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's virtual press briefing will focus on the impacts of the Trump administration's anti-immigrant actions during its what would be the upcoming first 100 days in office. While there's a lot of developments and just federal policies in general to discuss, for today's briefing, we'll be focusing on a select number of key issues. You'll find a fact sheet in the chat that I will drop right now. And this fact sheet will be available afterwards as well. But this fact sheet includes or outlines additional actions and policies that the Trump administration has put forward. Um, and it covers more policies beyond what we'll be focusing on today. So please feel free to view that as we go through this briefing. We'll have time for questions at the end of the briefing. You can either submit your questions using the Q&A feature that should be located at the bottom of your screen. And also you can raise your hand at the end of the briefing if you'd like to ask your question vocally. So with that, I'd like to welcome today's panelists. Today we're joined by Murad Awada, President and CEO of the New York Immigration Coalition, Rosie Eugenio, Legal Director at the New York Immigration Coalition, Jessica Maxwell, Executive Director at the Workers Center of Central New York, Cyrus Mehta, who is a legal service provider, and Darnell Benoit, who's the Executive Director of Flamboyant Haitian Literacy Project. So now I'd like to kick it off to Murad.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Murad Awada. I'm the president and CEO of the New York Immigration Coalition. As we get closer to the first 100 days of this administration, what we've seen the Trump administration do has been really continue to wage war on not just immigrant communities, but on our democracy as a whole. The Trump administration has issued over 25 presidential actions related to immigration, alongside hundreds of additional sweeping policy actions, which we'll discuss today. Attacks on immigrants continue to be seen and felt across the country, not just here in New York, through anti-immigrant bills, funding for mass and unlawful deportation, citizens being wrapped up in enforcement actions, and the overall threat to our democracy. This is not just about immigrants. We are witnessing and living through a constitutional crisis in this moment when our constitutional rights to freedom of speech or the state's rights to make its own laws are threatened. It is the very real implications for all New Yorkers and people who call this country home. And that is what people are feeling right now. And we all need to be paying attention. This isn't just, again, about immigrants. We're seeing the broad swath of actions impacting all people who call this country home, those without status, with status, including U.S. citizens who just over the past couple of days, a few U.S. citizens have been detained by ICE and put in detention. And we're also seeing further collaboration across the federal government with immigration enforcement, from ICE collecting sensitive information from federal agencies, including the IRS. And in this moment, not only are we seeing the attacks, but we're also seeing expanded surveillance, enforcement, and detention of the administration, but also bypassing due process and instilling deeper fear across communities. What we've seen from the Trump administration is increased and unlawful enforcement in communities. We saw them revoke the sensitive locations policy, and through that, which had historically protected sensitive locations like schools, places of faith, as well as medical institutions, we're seeing New Yorkers who are being arrested in or near sensitive locations. And that is as well creating heightened levels of fear across communities. And it's also impacting access to essential services and participating in everyday activities. We see the non-citizen registration requirement that has been kicked off over the past 2 weeks, creating conditions for mass roundups and racial profiling of citizens and non-citizens alike. Again, we're seeing an enormous amount of fear and uncertainty felt across communities. And this is another tool for deportation and detention. And on this, we're also seeing that the administration is truly uh, trying to ensure that their mass deportation plan is successful, and that is not possible without the collusion between ICE and local law enforcement. And here in the state of New York, we've seen Nassau, Broome, and Rensselaer counties sign up for expanded 287G agreements specifically to assist with immigration enforcement. And to talk more about targeted ICE enforcement here in the state of New York, join me in welcoming to the mic our sister Jessica Maxwell, the Executive Director of the Worker Center of Central New York.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here with you all today. The Worker Center of Central New York is based here in Syracuse and serves workers in low-wage sectors throughout Central New York and the North Country. And as Murad has been saying, what we're seeing in our region is basically a campaign of terror and chaos against immigrants, children, parents, families, workers, documented and undocumented. And those being targeted primarily are workers, often essential workers, many of whom have lived here in our upstate New York communities for decades as part of the community, working and supporting their families. These are construction workers, restaurant workers, hotel workers, packing plant workers, farm workers. We've seen raids in the North Country at lumber mills and dairy farms. A raid at Flack Farms in St. Lawrence County resulted in the detention of a worker who was collaborating in an OSHA investigation of a worker death that happened at that farm last May. This was the worker who found the body of his coworker, a young mother who was trampled to death by a cow. He had a letter of interest from OSHA supporting his pursuit of deferred action status. He was detained and has been transferred out of the region, which we're seeing a lot of. We have workers in Syracuse and Fulton who are basically being stalked, followed from their workplaces by unmarked vehicles, approached and sometimes surrounded by masked men without uniforms who don't identify themselves. And we're seeing active collusion with ICE and Border Patrol from local law enforcement in some of these areas, especially in our region in Oswego County, which does not have a 287G agreement. And as well, blatant racial profiling, which has now been documented through our collaboration with two Syracuse-based reporters who just this week put out a feature investigation after obtaining body cam footage and arrest reports in Oswego to corroborate what we have been saying and what our members have been telling us has been happening there. Those targeted also include people who have open cases, who had declared themselves, who've been detained and deported in blatant violation of their due process. Our member Delmy Rendon, whose removal case was dismissed in 2022 and who is pursuing asylum for herself and her 10-year-old daughter, was detained after hitting a deer in St. Lawrence County in January after local police called Border Patrol despite her having a valid driver's license. She had complied with all of her court dates and deadlines, and yet she has been sitting in a detention center in Louisiana for 3 months today. And the judge there is arguing that the court cannot authorize bail for her. This is the mother of two young daughters, one a US citizen. She was studying English, actively involved in her community. We have support letters from so many people on her behalf. And a week after Delmy's detention, her husband was unjustly detained, followed to work at a local lumber company, accused of missing a court date, which was later shown to have been a false accusation, and he was held overnight under ICE detention in Batavia with his two daughters, including his 6-year-old US citizen child. While he was detained, he was questioned about who else worked at the lumber yard with him. Also in February in Jefferson County, we had a woman who was 6 months pregnant, the sister of one of our members, who was on her way to church with her husband. They were both taken, abducted by ICE. They had an open asylum case with a pending filing due on March 7th. They were detained on February 9th. The court shows their filing was received on February 11th, yet her husband is still being held in Batavia, and she simply disappeared. Online, she only showed up as in custody, no idea of where she was. Border Patrol refused to confirm whether she was in their custody or where she was. They would not confirm whether she had been given access to a doctor, although she missed a medical appointment she had that week with her doctor due to her pregnancy. Her family did not hear from her for 18 days. She was never given any phone call, not even to her lawyer. And on February 27th, she called from Guatemala, where she had already been deported in clear violation of her due process. These tactics, I'll say, have shocked both immigrants and non-immigrants in our community, leaving residents feeling unsafe and frankly outraged. We're aware of at least one worker death in our region that was in large part due to the fear on the part of workers at a dairy farm to leave and seek appropriate medical attention. And now we have a family who is reeling from the loss of a young man who was in his early 20s, who passed away. The only silver lining I think that we're seeing is we have received an outpouring of support from our local community members in support, standing up for our immigrant neighbors like we have never seen before. And we're going to continue fighting and organizing with the immigrant community and allies to stop what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I'd like to turn it over to Rosanna Eugenio, our our legal director here at the New York Immigration Coalition, to talk more about the attacks on lawful immigration status and from citizenship to temporary status, putting more people at risk of deportation and family separation. Rosanna?
Thank you, Murad. Good morning, everyone. Imagine following the rules of the game like any other, and then having it switched up on you in the middle. That's what this Trump administration 2.0 is doing by revoking lawful status programs like temporary protected status for countries like Venezuela and Haiti, claiming that the conditions in those countries have changed when they have clearly not, and that's just not a credible position for any administration to take. Terminating other lawful parole programs like the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan, or CHINVA program. And most recently, sending out an email to a blanket email with no specificity to anyone saying it's time for you to leave. And those emails were targeted at immigrants in their process, undocumented immigrants, and even including US citizens, and was sent out by Customs and Border Protection. And for anyone who doesn't think that this affects US citizens, you have to ask yourself, where did they get that list of names to send out those emails in the first place? We've seen attacks on students and visa holders and permanent residents for their First Amendment expression of speech. You'll hear from a couple of panelists about that as well. We have in New York, we have had high profile cases of Mahmoud Halil, Yoon Seo Chung, who described feeling hunted by this administration, Moshe Madawi, who was in the process of applying for citizenship when he was detained. All green card holders, all involved in First Amendment protected speech, and all detained by ICE for exercising their constitutional rights. The Trump administration has also been taking steps towards a travel ban, but this time around under the 2.0 version, it's a shadow ban, revoking visas for people from Middle Eastern countries, pressuring or trying to pressure permanent residents from these countries into renouncing their residency status, and then most recently decimating the State Department and announcing layoffs and cuts that will create such an administrative and paperwork logjam that no one will be able to functionally come in. We've also seen now laying the groundwork for attacking the institutions, the attorneys, and the people on the ground who work with immigrants through defunding and demonizing doing our regular jobs, calling Know Your Rights information, eluding ICE, attacking attorneys, attacking law firms. Attorneys and institutions and nonprofit institutions make the process better, smoother, and faster by demystifying the complexities of immigration. Immigration and taxes are the two most complicated areas of law. I think we can all acknowledge that. And you need institutions and attorneys and people on the ground to help navigate the crazy maze and the constant changes. And through attacking these institutions, threatening the public service loan forgiveness for attorneys, threatening the 501c3 status of institutions like ours on this call, these attacks are going to hurt everyone. But the Trump administration is losing in courts. right? And that's something that we need to keep at the forefront and keep fighting and have people defend not only immigrants, but the institutions that serve immigrants as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna. I'd like to kick it over to Cyrus Mehta, who's an immigration attorney, to discuss the impacts that we've been seeing with students, international students, and what the Trump administration is doing on that front. Cyrus?
Thank you. I'm following up from where Rosanna left. She's already given a good background of what's going on with students. And there are two categories of students that have been impacted by the Trump administration policies. The first group of students, as Rosanna mentioned, are students who have been penalized for expressing their speech under the First Amendment. There are deportation grounds that allow the DHS to institute deportation proceedings based on foreign policy grounds. So if the students' views contradict the foreign policy interests of the United States, that's a deportation ground under INA 237 AC4. It is a very broad ground from the Cold War era. It has rarely been used, but now it is being used against students who have written op-eds in the case of Ms. Osterk, or students who have been involved in campus protests in the case of Mr. Khalil, and most recently in the case of Mr. Mahdavi. Also, Mr. Bader Suri has been impacted. He was a research scholar at Georgetown University. The DHS has broad power to also detain a student, whether they are a green card holder or on a non-immigrant F1 visa, under this ground. And there is no bond, actually, unfortunately, based on a regulation that can be challenged because it's ultra vires, the statute. But that's what's going on. And these students, including Mr. Mahdavi, have sought habeas corpus relief, independent of the deportation proceeding, asking for their release right now while their deportation proceeding continues, because their detention has been unconstitutional, and it is clearly egregious abridgment of their First Amendment rights. That's what's being played out right now for these group of students. And the experience is terrible because they get whisked away. In Mr. Mahdavi's case, there were 10 cars waiting for him when he was at his naturalization interview. And these were agents who were not in uniform and whisked him away. And their modus operandi is to take them to Louisiana, where they'll be far away from their family, their lawyers. And in Mr. Mahdavi's case, which I'm one of the lawyers actually on that case, we got a TRO while he was still in Vermont. And so that's kept him there. And the TRO just got extended this morning for another 90 days. So he will be kept in Vermont while he is trying to seek release under the habeas proceeding. There's also another group of students. It's a large group of students, an ever expanding group of students, probably numbering now 5,000 plus. These are students in F1 visa status, and they suddenly wake up in the morning and get an email from DHS saying that their F1 status has been terminated in the SEVIS system. That's the Student Electronic and Visa Information System. So it just kind of gets terminated, and they're told that they're no longer in status. Then they get an email from the State Department where they got their visa saying that their underlying visa has been revoked. Many of these students may have had some infraction. It was probably minor. The charges may have been dismissed. It could have been as minor and inconsequential as traffic violation. But yet, what is happening now is that there is an artificial intelligence program that is matching the records of their infraction with the SEVIS database, and it's automatically just kind of spewed out by SEVIS that you have a termination. This has completely put students in a panic, and schools are also at their wits' end. The position being taken is that SEVIS is more like an information gathering database. It should not govern a student's status, and therefore the lawsuits being filed and the advice being given to students is that they can continue studying. Many students are on the verge of graduating in May, and they're still in school going to graduate, but their future in terms of getting work authorization through practical training is impacted. The good news is that students have been filing lawsuits en masse. All kinds of lawsuits have been initiated by individuals, class actions, mass litigation, group litigation all over the country. And generally what we're seeing is some success. We're getting a TRO, temporary restraining order, where the SEVIS termination is basically restored. And so that's what's happening with students. And I think I will stop here and be happy to take follow-up questions. But I've tried to give you a background of the fear and panic. Just to let you know that some students who've received these notices don't even know what's going on because they don't recall having any infraction with the law. It could be some social media post that they may have liked. And the sections of the law that are being used are violation of status, as well as the foreign policy grounds. Some students have received this foreign policy ground. And this has completely caused panic because they don't want to be the next student to be whisked away by ICE plainclothes agents and taken away to faraway detention centers.
Thank you, Cyrus. And thank you for your work, and thank you for your defense of all these students, but especially of Mohsen Dadawi. Next up, I'd like to introduce Darnell Benoit, the Executive Director of the Flamboyant Haitian Literacy Center, to discuss the attacks on temporary protected status, as well as the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan parole program. Darnell?
Hi, everyone. I'm Darnell Benoit from Flamboyant Haitian Literacy Project. My organization works with immigrant youth, specifically Haitian immigrant youth. It's a vibrant space that immigrant Haitian youth, newcomer students enter the space where they have access to different activities and supports. Like many other communities, the Haitian community, Haitian immigrants under attack. Many of our students have come to the Biden parole program for the past 2 years. This is a program that has welcomed thousands of Haitians in the United States, in different communities, especially in New York. Our youth, from day one of the administration, they had expressed concerns, questions of, should I go to school? We don't feel secure, they don't feel safe. That was from day one. So imagine right now, close to the 100 days. So it's been serious. This is a serious moment for us as an organization, that we haven't had time to process everything. And we've been around for a while. We haven't felt this way in a long time. The challenges, the questions from our families. At the beginning also, families were calling us, asking us, should they go to work? We know many families, many parents have stopped going to work. And that was from day one. because of all, what they were expecting, all the fears that they have. For the young people, we work with high schoolers. Our students tend to be older, 17 to 21. And these students are young adults. These are students who are making decisions for themselves. They're working, they're planning their futures here. They're planning on going to college. They're focusing on graduating high school, but they express feeling, feeling scared, and also they feel facing displacement. Many of the students have come from Brazil and have traveled to 12, 13 different countries to get here. They've traveled from Chile to get here. They've missed schools along the way. They've missed their friends. They've lost so much, their belongings. And now that they're here, and they feel a bit, they feel stable. They feel, okay, I'm here now. We're in a safe space, and so forth. Now, what's gonna happen? I have to start over again. I have to find a new school. I have to find new friends, learn another, just, they were settling here, learning the new language and feeling good. And now they're thinking, wow, being displaced and thinking about everything, the trauma that they've gone through to get here. So there is a lot of that going on within our space. We're an immigrant youth space, but we're in youth space, youth organization, where it's very vibrant and lively with activities and so forth. We have many face-to-face activities, the young people always in our space, but often we don't see the number of students showing up for the different activities that we usually have. For example, recently, it was last week was spring break. We're also an out of school program where we have different activities during the breaks. And we had an event on immigration, just to have a talk on immigration, just to make everyone feel comfortable. And we had a special guest to take us through all the different executive orders and so forth, so the young people can better understand. No one showed up. And later on, we found out that they were scared. Many of the students also, they're in denial, because as a young person, as a teenager, you don't want to be thinking about what's ahead. You don't want to be thinking about, being displaced, being deported, leaving your family, losing so much that you've already settled here. So there is a lot going on. The schools, for example, the schools are struggling with providing students with the different Know Your Rights workshop, the different information for the students to have to better understand, and also for the families. But overall, as a immigrant community, definitely Haitians feel under attack, because all the different statuses the executive orders are targeting, the Haitians fit in one category of them. So it's a lot for the community to tackle, and it's even more for young people who are trying to focus on their lives and attending college and graduating high school. The level of fear, the silence also, the silence of not talking, of being afraid, or not going out anymore with your friends and having your regular life here in New York City. So we've seen a lot of that, and all we can do is to continue to focus on their needs, focus, on conversations with these students, and making them feel as comfortable as we can, because we know that things are changing rapidly. There's a slow dose of this horrible situation coming at us every day, and yet these students have to continue on with their lives. They worry about, getting to their after school programs, like for an internship. They worry about getting to their jobs, right? People worried about the April 24th deadline. Should they stop working? Some people stop working already. Some people stopped doing what they were, their routine. They stopped their routines with that date. So that the fear is very, very real, and it's really having an effect on people's lives.
Thank you, Darnell. I think you may be asking yourself, how does this matter in New York? And what this means here in the state of New York is we're going to see an even more heightened increased collusion between ICE and local law enforcement, which is going to gut public safety for our communities. We're going to see additional cuts to essential services that are critical for all New Yorkers, including for immigrants and those who are workers in this city and the state. We're seeing attacks on visa holders, green card holders, including US citizens. The fear in our communities has been at record high, and the impact of these policies has had a chilling effect. And that chilling effect is, as you heard from Darnell, includes creating barriers in accessing services and participating within society. You know, every single one of these attacks is an attack on every single thing New York stands for. And as we've seen, the affordability crisis get even worse under this administration. We've seen the housing crisis get even worse. And as in a moment when we're trying to promote public safety, we're seeing the Trump administration not only do nothing on addressing the housing or affordability crisis, but actually making it incredibly even less safe for all people who call this country home. And that's why much of these federal actions are being fought in court, and many of them are already won in court. New York has a huge role to play and to push back on the city and state level. And the New York Immigration Coalition's answer is in the Blueprint for Immigrant New York, a comprehensive plan. In short, New York State must pass New York for All this year and fully fund the Access to Representation Act, funding for immigration legal services, which we're asking for $165 million to ensure that those who need representation have access to it. In addition to that, we need to ensure that we're defending the public safety of New Yorkers by preserving our sanctuary policies at the city and state level. There is no reason why our local and state resources should be colluding with family separation, gutting our communities, and harming our local and state economy. Thank you all for joining us today, and I'm going to pass it over to Kim to start the Q&A portion of the briefing.
Thank you so much, Murad, and thank you so much to all of our panelists today. Now we'll take questions from the audience. You can either submit them through the Q&A option located at the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your question there. Right now, I do see a question from Junda from World Journal saying some international students' F1 visas were revoked only because of minor traffic violations such as speeding, parking, etc. There was even a green card holder living in Staten Island being detained by CBP due to many years ago a speeding ticket this month. My question is, are these just certain individual cases or much more in general? Should all legal visa holders or green card immigrants worry about their history of traffic tickets? Thank you. I'm looking at Cyrus or Rosie, if either of you want to hop in and answer this question from Junda.
Sure, I'll be happy to take it. And Rosie, feel free to also chime in. I think right now, if you're in F1 visa status and you've had some kind of minor traffic infraction, it could impact your registration in the Student and Electronic Information System, the SEVIS. So that is the main concern. If you're a green card holder and have had a traffic issue, it may be less of a concern. We need to kind of look at the facts in that particular case. But you know, if you have a green card, you need to be convicted of a deportable ground, and a traffic violation may not be a deportable or inadmissible ground. So we have to look at each case on its own facts here. You know, it may have been a judgment that was not attended to or something like that. But in any event, I think, you know, on the other hand, if you're a green card holder, you have the rights. You know, there are rights established under the statute and even under Supreme Court precedent. You have rights to be admitted into the U.S. as a permanent resident. You can't be kicked out at the border or the airport. You can demand that you be presented before an immigration judge and establish that you're a permanent resident, the government has a very heavy burden to prove that you're deportable as a green card holder.
Yeah, and I would add to that that, what we've seen from, certain enforcement agencies like Border Patrol or CBP is an element of ask questions later, and enforcement first. And so, and then also some electronic searches and other things that'll happen at the airport that, are infringing on certain rights that we hold. And so you're going to see that culture of lawlessness so long as they're empowered to act in that manner, and that there aren't, and the judicial limits aren't put in place to stop the agencies from acting in a lawless or reckless manner. So that's why it's important to actually, pursue all the remedies in court to hold the agencies and the government accountable for their actions. But Cyrus is right. For someone who's a permanent resident, they do have more rights than someone in a student visa status. And then for someone who's applying for citizenship, things like minor traffic violations that are under $500 that don't involve things like, drinking or DUIs or stuff like that isn't supposed to impact your record. But again, be vigilant, because questions might be asked later. And so if there's any concern about that, that's when you disclose those things with the person, your advocate, or who you're working with, so that they can have those conversations and be prepared for them.
I also just want to note that the Trump administration, throughout their entire nearly 3 months and at this point, has been saying that they are taking these actions for the safety and security of the country. And what we are saying is that this is not, in fact, about safety and security. It's about creating chaos, panic, and fear across communities. And cruelty is their point. People with status, without status, and U.S. citizens are being targeted in this moment. And that is their point. Their point is to continuously try to harm all communities of color in this country.
Thank you so much, Murad, Cyrus, and Rosie, for that response. I see that we have another question here in the chat from Stephanie Meditz. What are your thoughts on First Deputy Mayor Randy Masters' executive order to allow ICE onto Rikers Island for criminal enforcement and the city council's lawsuit to stop it?
We support the city council's efforts to stop the mayor's effort to bring ICE back onto Rikers. The pretenses that he is alluding to that encourage him to bring them back, we think are false. This is clearly part of a deal he's brokered with the federal administration for his quid pro quo deal of dropping the charges against him to participate within their mass deportation plan, which is targeting our families. Many people, I don't know if folks know this, but many people who are on Rikers have not actually been convicted of anything. Rikers about 80% of the population on Rikers are people who are awaiting their day in court. And the mayor is trying to walk around our sanctuary policies here in the city, where they clearly state the city of New York will not participate in immigration enforcement. He may call it whatever he wants to, but that's exactly what he's inviting into our city's facilities. And that's why we support the New York City Council's efforts in this moment. The lawsuit earlier this week, the judge put an interim restraining order on that to not move forward. And the case will be heard on Friday. Each side has to present their case, and we're hoping that the court strikes it down.
Thank you so much, Murad. Again, if there are any more questions, please feel free to hit it, submit your question in the Q&A chat, or raise your hand if you want to say it out loud and I can unmute you. I do want to uplift a message here in the chat. If reporters would like to connect with any of these panelists that you heard from today for follow-up interviews beyond today's press briefing, please reach out to press@nyic.org and we can follow up with you there. But yes, please submit any questions that you may have here. But if not, we can end it. We can end today's briefing today, right here. But thank you so much to all of our panelists today, Murad, Cyrus, Rosanna, Darnell, and Jessica, for talking about, a lot of these developments that we've been seeing throughout the first, or what would be close to the first 100 days of this Trump 2.0 administration. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. But yes, thank you.